Okay, so yeah, I think last week's one was interesting that three people were trying to approach the same thing at the same time. I guess it lacked a little bit in viewer excitement. So gonna try this a little bit differently and make this a bit more interactive today. Um, unless I don't know, Christian, if you had a different approach or had an idea of what if you wanted to do anything dialogue system related.
From my side, I don't have anything today. I'm going to be one of the viewers today,
Okay,
if that's cool with you.
yeah, that's
It
great.
was
That's
a
fine.
it was a long day with the first
Yeah,
year.
shame, man. I can imagine. Cool. No, that's fine.
But I'll pop in if I've got some ideas and
Yeah.
stuff. I've also
So
popped in a suggestion in the chat.
awesome. Yeah, no, that sounds good. Cool. So we're gonna do this. Let me get that going as well. A little differently from scratch, basically. No prior knowledge or any ideas of structure. Well, a few ideas of structure, but that's just because I've kind of been through this before. Um, but I'm going to do it scriptable object based. That is very dark. Oh well, make do with what we got. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do dialog system. We need to kind of figure out what are the requirements of the system first. Just do this in a sticky notes, I guess. So based on games you guys have played, or let's actually just go and look for dialogue and speech dialogue and dialogue choice. Yeah. So if you haven't seen this website before, this is Game UI Database. It's got hundreds and hundreds of games. And whoever's put this together has gone and taken screenshots of pretty much every single aspect of the game. Like if we go look here at a short hike, it's got all the settings, modals, game states. It's a really, really great resource for looking at UI and the different screens within the game. So you can get some really nice reference from this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Little hints there. You can do that pretty easily with Text Mesh Pro. You can have the image inside of the text element like that. But anyways, let's get back to looking at some dialogue options. Animal Crossing's one is quite nice. I think we use this as a reference for Puggo. Uh,
So with Animal Crossing can be a fun one to approach because it takes into account obviously who you're talking to, and they have a nickname for you. And they talk about events or dates or objects that you give them or they give you or other villagers. So there's a lot of room for sort of stuff being populated at runtime, which could be fun.
yeah. So this is what we did with Puggo. So similar structure there with the little name tag, then the actual dialogue, and then the options showing up below that. So similar there. It's got a nice shape to it as well, like the UI. Obviously this is intended for Switch, so everything is very big and oversized as well. Let's look at the rest of the options here. Even the settings menu is like a dialogue. Interesting.
And all those little blobs always animate a little bit, so there's sort of like a safe area, I guess, that they essentially then just sort of blob around, so it always like feels a little bit alive.
Aha, okay. What was that? There was a laundry game that was being developed by, was it Matt Turnbull or something? No, I'm not gonna find it now. Don't know where it is. But anyways, yeah, he was developing a dialogue system, but he really went into depth in putting in effects. So you would have like little letters dancing as well, so certain words could be highlighted by making them dance around a bunch, or have different colors and stuff like that. And you can do that with rich text and then custom shaders as well. So maybe we'll look at that as well. But essentially, what we need out of the dialogue system is, so we need chains of dialogue. So, one after the next. Then we need choice. And we need speaker name, I guess. What else?
I mean, I think it could be worthwhile going into like rich text, kind of with images and stuff.
Okay, let's do that as well. And hey, Chris.
And then remembering choices.
Persistent.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, okay, that's going to be an interesting one. I haven't done that before. You guys are doing that in your game, eh?
Brad has it figured out, but I think I'm not exactly sure how he's doing our persistent choices. I think because we're using ink is actually what's going to be tracking our persistent choices.
Oh, right, yeah.
Rather than, or I think he writes it to ink, and when he writes it to ink, he writes it to its own script, which then if we need it, we can use it in the game. I don't know, is Brad here?
No, Brad.
Brad is not here.
I think ink uses JSON saving.
Yeah. Ink files are saved as JSON files, like they're converted straight to JSON files.
And it has a keyword for its variables, as far as I know.
Ooh, so that's cool.
Yeah, I'm not super sure.
I do have experience with Inky, not Ink particular, but Inky. But I use it for my honors game. But yeah, that uses
it's the same
text-based commands.
It's the same one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not the one working with it yet, so when I become the one working with it, then I'll figure it out.
The way I built it was text-based commands, so basically through dialogue triggering, it can trigger actions within the game.
That sounds probably quite similar to how Brad is doing ours, because I know it saves both in the text and in a script somewhere.
Yeah, that's the same.
This game is so weird. So another feature that I've added to the list is time-based choices. That could be an interesting option as well.
I suppose it would just be how you set up the UI, but it might be worthwhile to go into kind of varying choice numbers. So some will have 1 or 2 choices, and some might have, like here we've got 4.
Yeah.
This is a very cute. That's a very pretty game.
This one.
That's a really nice game.
Cozy Grove.
Cozy Cave. Cozy Grove. There you go.
Cozy Grove.
What does
Animal
this
Crossing
mean?
mixed with like.
Oh, that's like The Witcher, where I think you've got your yellow choices, which advances the dialogue, but then you've got choices that you can choose over and over again, kind of like your extra info, and then the one that moves to the next chunk of dialogue. That could be cool to explore, like in The Witcher 3. You've got your, I think it's your silver and your gold dialogue.
Yeah, if you actually scroll up, there's a screenshot from Assassin's Creed which does the same thing. So you'll see it's got like gold choices. That one right there. The gold ones is the dialogue will end and it'll essentially send your quest in a direction. The white ones are either repeat some information again. So you'll always know that if you do the white option, it won't take you out of the dialogue, whereas the gold ones will. So I guess they are same as The Witcher.
I think The Witcher 3's is, I don't know if The Witcher 3 is, because this one, I suppose these are different choices, and that'll obviously end the dialogue in a different way.
Yeah, that part specifically was in the like Viking rap battle stuff. So that's where the timer parts come in, because you need to essentially find a appropriate response within that little amount of time. So you need to sort of read through all the options and then sort of give
The
response.
Witcher
So that's
uses that
what
little
time is.
icon there.
So that's specifically
that's
to
cool.
exit dialogue. This is more casual dialogue. If you find quest-related dialogue, one of them will also be gold, and that will move you past that little dialogue tree. So there you've got the two options. If you choose the gold one, it moves you into the next one, which will have a gold option or two, and then the white options.
You can search for The Witcher 3, the botchling. I know the quest changes if you select a different option.
Yeah, so...
there's one with the red text, very small there.
Oh, that's something that you wouldn't be
That's
able...
with a sign.
Yeah, if you don't meet the stats. They're not really showing it. That one, maybe?
Maybe
Nope, these are all gold.
like something like Mass Effect as well, which has like multiple choices ranging from like the whole spectrum of Paragon and Renegade, which could be cool.
And then they have these kind of options in square brackets where it's an action instead of the actual dialogue.
But kind of the indication of gold dialogue means you won't be able to go back to that
A sound
options
bite.
menu.
Soundbite would be a good option to have as well.
That would be cool.
Some things about The Witcher 3 also is you have like a few seconds to make a choice sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, like this image here. Time left to decide. And they either have icons if it's kind of leading off to another action. Yeah, I think it's like yellow is quest related and white is just random dialogue.
Yeah, so white dialogue can be chosen multiple times. So if you speak to the same person, I think you can choose the white dialogue, but then sometimes it'll give you there we go, some gold dialogue with white dialogue. So if you chose that white dialogue, it would bring you back to this menu.
Yeah, and then you can complete the quest dialogue. Yeah.
And then, if you chose the gold, it would take you to the next menu, which might have white or gold dialogue.
I know this is maybe something that's small, but a lot of games also do with dialogue. It's like if you already chose that, already have received that lore with that type of dialogue, it grays out in The Witcher.
Yeah, you've gone through it already. Okay, yeah, let's see. Yeah, we'll just mark that down as visited dialogue. It's like purple links, purple hyperlinks. That's not Witcher UI. Oh, is that Witcher 2?
Yeah, Witcher 2.
Cool. Yeah, I think we have got quite a bit to get going on. Cool. Okay. Let's see how we're going to interact with this. I suppose we could just click on the birds. Or how should we do this? Do we want to control a single unit or what?
You can just click on the birds. I think that'll give the same result at the end of the day.
Yeah, and then maybe the different birds can have different dialogue. That's something we could also explore.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let's do that. Yeah, we'll keep them birds in here.
One of them has to say, "Stop poking me." Just test it.
Okay, so yeah.
It's like some games have, let's say, NPCs as having normal voice lines and then dialogue above their head. Is that not the same system, or is that completely something else?
Could be the same system.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just say whether you can talk to them or not, and then
yeah, it doesn't have to have choices. It can just be dialogue.
It's also just how you set up your UI and how you interact with it, I suppose. But a dialogue system is, at the end of the day, just a dialogue system. It's a way of showing the dialogue to the player.
Yeah, and it can be in world or it could be on the HUD. That's up to you, I guess. Cool. So let's make a new script here. This is just going to be our, what are we going to call this? Dialog. Naming is an important part of this process. You got to get it right the first time, or you can rename it later. This is like the displayer, the speaker, the NPC in a way, but it could go onto anything. The dialogue player, I
Dialog
guess.
display, or
Dialog display.
So this is the thing that will process the dialogue, because I imagine, are we going to do it scriptable object?
Yeah, scriptables. So referencing a scriptable on here, and then if you interact with it, display it, essentially.
Either like dialog display or dialog player, because you're kind of running through the scriptable and playing the dialogue, but that can get a bit confusing using player.
I
often name scripts and then realize, oh, this isn't what it does, and then
yeah, exactly. Come on, name. Why am I blank? Okay, we'll go with display for now. Maybe come up with a better name later. Okay, so we're going to have dialog display, and that's going to go on our unit. Or dialog interaction. That's what it is. Okay, we've got to rename that, the class as well, to match the script name. Okay, then we're going to need some input as well, so let's do an input controller. Probably could have saved some time and kept the old one. Oh well. Well, I'm going to do this the same way as I did last week, so that whoever missed that gets a cool preview of that. So I'm going to make this a static class, public static class, and this is going to be my input controller class. I need to create my input actions first. Input actions there. Dialog actions, or let's just call it gameplay actions. Gameplay input. And then this one is going to be dialog.
Are we just going to do button choices, or are we going to kind of do double duty and maybe map them to like the number keys? That could be somewhat interesting.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, quite easily map it to the numbers. Yeah, we'll come back and do that. Okay, so we're just going to left mouse button to interact with something. And with that, we're also going to need a mouse position. And that needs to be a value of type vector2 mouse position. Okay, that's cool. Then we generate the C# class as usual. And then we can start. So gameplay input. And of course we have to make this static. So everything in this class has to be static because the class itself is marked as static. And then we can go public static void enable, and we're going to do oopsie, close that one. Public static void disable, and we're going to do a public static void dispose. So if you've worked with the input actions, you'll kind of recognize this formatting. So over here we're going to say if gameplay input is null, then we're going to go ahead and initialize a new instance of that. And then we're going to go and say gameplay input. We're going to do just a null check inline, so that little question mark just checks for null, just so that we don't get any null reference there. If it's not null, then we're going to go ahead and enable that. And we're going to do the same for disable, and the same for dispose. And when we do dispose it, then we also want to just null out the actions themselves. So there shouldn't be anything too confusing here. We're just checking if this is null. If it is null, then we create a new instance of it, and then we enable it. Same as what you usually do with input actions, just that we're doing this all in a static form, so we're not attaching the script to any object in the game. Then what we need to do is just set up our input actions. And we can call that over, yeah. And in here we can write out all of our performed and cancelled and all that sort of stuff. So we know that we've got a mouse position, so we're going to do that as a public static vector2 mouse position. And then in here we can say, so first of all, let's just do a check for if gameplay input equals null, then we're just going to return out of this function so that we don't go causing a bunch of null ref exceptions there. And then we can do gameplay input dot gameplay dot mouse position performed plus equals, and then we do a lambda expression. And in here we can say mouse position equals x dot read value of type vector2. So that just reads the value out of the mouse position. And then for our click, our action, I'm going to do the same. Interact is what we called it. And when that gets performed, then we also do the same thing, except this time we're going to broadcast a Unity event. So we need Unity engine.events up there, and then we can go public static Unity event, and it's going to be on interact performed. And that's going to always have to initialize it as well, so just equal to a new Unity event. Then when that interact gets performed, then we can just go and invoke that. What are you complaining about? Oh, just need semicolon. So yeah, the interact, we don't need any sort of data over here. And we can get the mouse position when we need it. We're not going to pass the mouse position through with the interact because not all interact is going to require a mouse position. Depends if you're actually, we're going to cast array with the mouse position, with the interact. I guess we are going to need the mouse position every time, but that's fine. I'm going to read it from here instead of passing it through. Okay, cool. So that takes care of our input class. It's a static class, so it doesn't have to go on any object. It can just somewhere exist. We just have to call the enable somewhere. Okay, then in our dialogue interaction, we don't need to do anything here just yet. Okay, cool. Then we can create another script over here. This is going to be the let's make this the dialog controller, yeah. And let's just drop that on here. So unit manager goes bye-bye. And here we can go dialog controller, and we're going to drop that on here. So I'm not creating one like huge master input script which detects all raycasts in the game. I'm rather having the input being interpreted or kind of read in its own script, and then you can have individual controller or manager scripts that then use that input. So the raycasting will happen from here then based on if interact performed gets fired off. So another check we could do is also just make sure that it's not enabled already. Is there already enabled? No, there is not. Okay, so we're going to put in a static bool. Just make that false to begin with, and then we can say if enabled. Whoopsie. Okay, and then we can disable it if the opposite is true. So just switch those two around, so that we don't accidentally double enable. So we might have, like in our dialog controller, we want to enable the actions, but then you might have another manager that also wants to enable and listen to the actions. So this will just prevent that from double enabling. And in this way, then you could have, when you open up the UI or whatever, or you go into a transition scene or a cutscene or something, you can go and disable the controls. And once the cutscene's done, then you can just go and enable them again. Okay, so in here, let's do this in the start. We're going to do this in the on enable. Yeah, let's do this on enable. And then we can go input controller dot enable. So see how simple that is now. Because it's a static class, I can just go input controller referencing the class directly and call the enable function. And that enable function will go and create the actions and enable those actions for me.
Okay, and because we've got that is enabled check, we can enable it from multiple classes in the same scene, and it'll only enable ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Handy.
And then we can just add our listener. And we're going to do so you can actually get your IDE to just go and create the function for you by just naming it whilst you're writing it out, and then if you press Control full stop, then it'll give you that little menu like what do you want to do, and then you can go and create that method. So fast little way of doing that. And then in the on disable, we can go and remove the listener. And suppose we can disable. Yeah, we can disable it and maybe do like in the on destroy, because this script should persist throughout the scene. Maybe if you're changing scenes, then you would want it to go and dispose of those controls. And always remember to remove listeners as well. If you reload the scene and you haven't removed the listener, you're going to get double listeners in the next round. Okay, then now once we've got the interact performed, we need to do a raycast to find the interactable. Yeah, that's it actually. And we can just do it in the interact perform because that's all we're doing for dialog controller. We don't need to split it out into another function yet. So if, okay, first we need our array. So array equals, and this is where we need camera, we need a camera reference. And if you call it camera, it's going to give you a little yellow squiggly line. So you need the new keyword, and then that little yellow line will disappear. So that's cool. And we're going to do a screen point to array. And we're going to use our input controller dot mouse position as our input there. Then we're going to do if physics dot raycast. We're going to use our ray, and we're going to do ray out raycast. Yeah, I always forget the order. I've been doing this for so long, but I always forget it. Out ray hits. And then we're going to do for a distance of, we can make it like 400 or so. Not the only one, yeah. You rely on these things to tell you what's happening anyways. And then I've made my collider a trigger. Oopsie. So I'm going to use the query trigger interaction dot collide so that I am colliding with that, and I need a layer mask as well. And my layer mask I'm going to set up over here as a layer mask variable, and this is going to be the dialog interaction mask. Okay, then I just need to get a reference to my camera. In this case, I can just do a camera.main call in the awake. Sorry, it needs to be capital camera.main. So this being camera as, so main being a static variable here, you can see public static camera main. That's why we can access it through the camera class directly. So always useful to also just alt click on these things to actually see what's going on under the hood in Unity. So like if we go look at the camera class over here, we can see a whole bunch of different things here. Everything is commented as well. So it's good practice to kind of just go through it and just, yeah, for interest's sake, look at what's available. We look at the physics class here. Can see what else is here. And maybe you pick up some tips on like some attributes or how to structure certain things. You'll notice that none of the code, like the actual functions, are not written out here. And that's because this is just kind of like a summary version of the script. It's just giving you the names of the functions that you can use and the variables. But yeah, take a look at all that. So we've got our array, we've got our raycast, we've got our interaction mask, we're colliding with triggers. So that is all cool. And now what we want to do is look for any dialog interaction script, or maybe yeah, let's do a dialog interaction script. That's cool. So we're going to do a if hit dot try hit dot collider, dot try get component, and we want to try get the dialog interaction. Sorry. Dialog interaction component. We also have to out that dialog interaction. And you'll notice we're using try get components instead of get component not equal to null, because then you have to cache like a variable if you want to use it again. This just creates a variable only if it does manage to find the get component. So it's just a nice way to do it.
Try and then get components have saved my life.
Yeah, and I don't think you actually even need that. Yeah.
But they've changed my life. Yeah, you don't need the
you don't need the angled brackets. Yeah, the generic call. But I like to leave it there because that's how get component calls look like. So you don't need it, but sure, whatever. And then once we have our dialog interaction, then we can call some kind of interact on here. So public void interact, and let's just log out what we're doing here. And you'll notice I always put in a $sign before the string for the log, and that's so that you can put in variables directly in here, like GameObject.name. And as another parameter of log, you can also just do GameObject, and that means when you select the log in the console, it'll select the GameObject for you in the hierarchy as well. So it's nice and easy for you to spot which object is calling that log. And then we can go dialog interaction dot interact. Yeah, so that takes care of our interaction. We just need to go and set up a few variables on our controller here. Okay, so our interaction mask, let's go ahead and create another layer. And let's call this, or let's call it interactable. We don't need a whole layer exclusively for dialog. So let's use the interactable layer, and then our unit, we just need to make sure that that is on the interactable layer as well. And we can apply that to the prefab. So notice how when you change something in a prefab, it goes bold over here. You can just right click on any of the bold and just say apply to the prefab. You don't have to go, apply the overrides and all that. So yes, all of them are now on the interactable layer there. And our unit does have the script on, so we should be able to just try this out. Yes, interacting with unit 5, interacting with unit 4, unit 3, unit 6, unit 1, unit 2. This one was really struggling there. Wonder why.
How are your colliders set up? Are they at the
I think it's at the base. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, okay.
Though, shouldn't it fire off because you've got colliders on the mesh objects?
Yeah, but it's oh, so that's exactly what's up. Wait, no, that's on default. That one's on interactable. So this one I can probably just put it a little bit higher. That should do it. Yeah, the other way would be to, if you did a rigid body, then any of the colliders below it would contribute to that interaction. Although, no, those aren't on the same layer though. So those would have to be on the interactable layer as well for that to to work. So we'll just leave it like this. We can make this trigger maybe a little bit bigger. Yeah, that should do it. Yeah, that looks good. As a quick little bit of feedback, what we can do is just using dg.tweeting, and when we do interact, then we can just we can just do a little punch. So transform.do punch position, and we're going to punch it vector3 dot up multiply by 0.2. So it's just going to go 20 centimeters up in the air, and that's going to be for a duration of, let's do like 0.5 seconds, maybe less than that. And the rest should be fine. Now we get a little bit of feedback when we actually click on the pigeons, which is really nice. The only thing is that if you spam it, it's going to keep going down. We can fix that real quick though. Bool tweening equals false, and then we can just do a simple if not tweening. Tween equals true, move that up, and then we do an onComplete. So it'll only play if it's not currently playing.
Would another way to be able to spam click and still get interaction be to kind of reset the transform on the click and then do the tweening immediately after?
Yeah, you could totally do it that way. You would just have to store the original position though. Thank you. Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to store the original position on the click, because then that would take wherever it is currently and effectively do exactly what the tweening is doing.
Yeah, something like that. We can just make it a lot faster. But anyways, the feedback is nice, instead of just clicking and looking at the log. Maybe we separate that into its own function. So you can actually just select all of that and then go extract method. And then just rename the method to
interact feedback.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. Cool. Mind blown. Yeah, do tween is amazing stuff. Really, really simple to get that feedback. Yep.
Yep. Another thing that just has changed everything.
Okay, so
but
now
I feel like do tween is something you should kind of work in while you're making your stuff. It's actually quite tricky to add in after the fact.
Yeah, no, you definitely want to work that in as soon as possible, like what we're doing right now. Just having that and putting in that feedback there. Okay, so now we're going to work on the data of our dialog, so the scriptable object. So we're going to do a C# script, and it's going to be dialog data object. So I always use the suffix object at the end of the name, just to make sure that I know that it is a scriptable object. And if you type in scriptable object, you should have the autocomplete for that. And then I'm just going to change the path over here to data. and then dialog data. Yep. So I like to keep all my scriptable data in the same menu item under data, and then I'll have like maybe a subfolder for AI or for items or whatever the case may be. This one I've just got dialog data. Okay, and then for the dialog, so we need to have a bunch of choices that lead on from each other and a list of all the dialogue that plays out before being presented with a choice. So, and we're going to make this public. List needs to be added in here.
Okay, so we'd have, rather than each text box of dialogue being its own object, we'd have each kind of dialogue chain be.
Yes. Yeah.
And then that dialogue chain will give you, let's say, 3 choices, and those could lead to 3 different dialogue chains, and then.
Yeah. I'm going to use the incorrect English and call it dialogues because it just makes sense in terms of reading it. You know that it's a collection then. And once we have gone through all of our dialogues, then we're going to have a follow-on object. So that's going to be of the same type. So dialog data object. Actually, no. We're going to have, well, we need choices. Okay, we're going to do a public class dialog choice, and that's going to have it only has to have a single. Dialog choices never have, no, you can't, you only have one. Yep.
What's.
No, I was just considering if
yeah,
it needs to be a string or
one.
if it has to be a list of string, but no, it should just be a single string. With a choice, a choice is only one.
Yeah.
One option.
Because a choice will lead to a string, which will lead to a chain of dialogue, which.
Yeah.
I imagine. And that string would be kind of what the choice says. Imagining.
Yeah. Oh, and so with this, we want this to actually be a text area. And we can make it like a minimum of 2 lines and a maximum of 4 lines. So we can use a text area attribute like that. And that just gives a bigger space so you can actually read the dialogue. With the list, let's see what that does to the list, if it applies to individual ones or not. Okay, so we've got a list of dialogue, and then we'll have a list of dialogue options. Dialogue choice, yeah. And that's going to be, a new list. And this class we need to actually serialize. So system.serializable, so we can actually see it in here. Yeah, okay, and then we can write logic to check if the count of the dialogue choices is 0. If it is 0, then basically it just ends the dialogue there and then. So you exit it after confirming, I guess. Yeah. That's cool. We can write logic for that. So we save that, and now we can just construct some dummy data to work with. I'm just going to neaten up my scripts folder here a bit. So we've got input, and then we've got dialog once it finishes. There we go. And then I like to keep a data folder just in the project, and that's where I'll store all my scriptable objects. So this one's going to be Franklin. And now we can see our data here in the inspector. So the text area does work. Nice. That's cool.
How was that done? Kind of just adding a text area to the front of the list.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it actually applies to the individual objects. That's really nice. If you're moving scripts or renaming scripts, don't make the mistake of coming back here and just like saving the dead script. It is read and got a line through it. So make sure you close it and then go and open the real script again. Like that. Okay, and then our options. So yeah, let's just do 2 options. That's fine. So this can get a little bit messy if you don't have sort of a naming convention. So let's do like Franklin intro 0, and then we can do Franklin intro path A and maybe path B or something like that. So I haven't really thought of a better way to approach this just yet. If you guys have any ideas.
I think that's the biggest detractor from scriptable object-based dialogue systems, is if you're planning on doing like a very dialogue-heavy game, then they're going to become out of hand quite quickly unless you do have an established system. But even if you do, I think they'll still get quite messy.
Yeah, no, they can. I think what I would end up doing is actually writing an editor window to do node-based connections, and then
I was going to ask how much of a pain in the ass would that be?
It's going to take a good couple hours, like tens of hours.
Yeah,
but it'll be nice.
Because with the new Unity UI thingy,
UI elements,
it's not too bad to make the actual window because it's using the same logic that creates a shader graph and visual scripting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pain in the ass, trust me.
Yeah, I think there's a tutorial on it though.
There is. There's a guy who did a really good one.
Because that could be cool.
You have to check the date on it because a lot of that stuff's become deprecated.
Yeah, UI elements there. 2019. This is probably too old by now.
But even with node-based, I don't know if you've worked in Twine. Even those can get quite messy quite quickly if you're, again, not structuring your branches well enough. They become just these nightmare webs.
Yeah.
So I think, I do think
that's
still
cool.
kind of just the best is having like a script that is read, like RenPy and Ink, stuff like that. If you're going like super narrative heavy with your dialogue.
Yeah. If you're doing paragraphs at a time, loads of options. Yeah, cool. There's a nice tutorial there. Okay, so I just want to rename this variable over here because it's not dialog, it's choice. Then our first choice, we'll just go with first choice.
And would we keep the speaker on the game object? Or would we keep the speaker on these dialogue nodes, on these scriptable objects? Kind of who's speaking?
I would say that would go on the dialogue interaction script. Just in case you want to change characters and move that around.
Because then I suppose if, for example, this is currently Franklin, but let's say you wanted Edward to say this stuff, then you'd have to go to each one of these and change the speaker to Edward, whereas if it we could just put this on Edward, and if Edward already stores their name, then he could be the one saying it. I don't know if that was a really bad kind of example, but yeah, keeping the speaker name on the thing that you click on is probably the better option, thinking about it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you could always change that.
Sorry, Jared.
Yeah.
Kind of where I got stuck with my dialogue system is kind of triggering other events like world events-based systems through the dialogue system. Like, for instance, spawning stuff in the level when a mission starts or that kind of stuff. Can scriptable object-based dialogue systems do that?
Not from the scriptable object itself, but we can definitely do that in the dialogue interaction if we pair up a dialogue chain with an action.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool.
Because yeah, that's where I got stuck with mine.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of dummy data here. The first one gives you two choices which lead into separate dialogue chains. Then A gives you two more bits of dialogue and then a choice without a follow-on. So it's kind of just a confirmation to end the talk, but you're saying the last word, versus this one that doesn't have a dialogue choice, so it'll just end after that bit of dialogue there. So the question now, are we doing dialogue on the HUD or in the world? I suppose HUD, right? Yeah.
I think HUD would be, it would show a lot better.
Yeah, be easier to work with. Cool. Yeah, so let's set up some UI, my favorite. Do I have all my... No, I do not. I'm just going to go and hijack my shapes. Come on. So I've just got a whole bunch of general shapes over here with rounded corners and fills and outlines and stuff like that I use on all my projects. And I'm just going to go and drop that entire folder in here. Cool, so we're going to start off by just splitting our screen a bit. So we're going to call that dialog. Oh wait, we need a canvas on here. So I like putting the canvas on the root game object. That needs to be screen space overlay. And we need a canvas scaler, and we need a graphic raycaster. And that needs to be scale with screen size, 1920 by 1080. That we're going to set to 1, and cool, that's ready to go. And then what's really cool is if you actually remove this, or yeah, reset. No. Okay, no, I have to recreate that. So just creating an empty, and that's going to be dialog. Then I'm going to put that at the center bottom. I'm going to move it up by 60 pixels, 90 pixels. Let's see how that goes. And make it a width of 600 and a height of 300? No, 400. And then I'm going to add an image to that. That's going to be my background. I'm going to scale it to the full size of its parent. And now I can see that my sizing, oops, that's better. Cool. And for my background, I'm going to use the rounded edges sprite. And I'm going to set the pixel unit multiplier to 15. Yeah, that's fine. And then just make it semi-transparent for now. That's cool. Okay, so that's the background on there. Yeah, then let's do an inner section for the content. Just going to scale up to the full size of its parent and then give it a top left, right, and bottom padding. So if we look at that here, you can see it's just giving it a little bit of room from the edges of the parent there. Okay, do we have any fonts? We have no fonts. Time to steal some fonts. Those are all boring fonts. That's fine. We'll use the boring ones. There, I just brought in some fonts from another project that we'll set up here already. So reuse your content from project to project. It's really easy to just go and sort of drag and drop it in there. And if it has all its meta files, then it's already going to be set up nicely for you. We're missing TMP essentials, probably. Yep. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we need our main text. So just text mesh pro. And we're going to scale that to the full size of the parent. And let's just check. So, Christian, what happens to this box if there's like a lot of text, or does text always fit in here? Or is there like a scroll view type of thing?
I'm trying to remember. I don't even think there's like most things on screen are kept pretty simple. Normally, all right, okay, wait. So if it's more than text that can fit on the screen, it just does a little arrow at the bottom, and you click, and they sort of speak the next sentence. If that makes sense. So
Okay.
they're sort of separated like that. So if it's too much dialogue on one, you just click the button, it then pops up to the next one. So sort of like a fit the maximum amount of sentences into this without overflowing, and then if it does overflow, then start a next or start a new dialog box.
Aha, okay, interesting. What should we do?
I mean, we'd probably just have to plan it, kind of, and have our list of strings in our chain. If we find one is too long, then split over two.
Yeah.
That's
maybe.
kind of as whoever's setting up the dialogue itself would have to consider.
Yeah.
I know that's how we're combating the walls of text you get.
Okay, so that gap is not actually big enough. Yeah, that's okay. Suppose we can make this a little shorter then. And did that start up at the top? Yeah, it starts at the top left. A lot of empty space there.
I think as kind of a general rule, most games with dialogue boxes and stuff only allow for like 3 lines of dialogue at max. And then, because otherwise it gets too, I'd say, overwhelming for the player to try read through. You'd rather have your player click to the next chunk of dialogue than sit there for like 10 minutes as this text keeps going.
This one, the box actually fits to the size of the content, because it's more of a speech bubble than a dedicated dialogue box. Where's like a very... Okay, well there's quite a bit of dialogue. You see, that makes it very difficult to read though, without a box behind it or something.
That was
This one?
that was subtitles.
Oh, is that subtitles? Okay.
Yeah, subtitles. That's mutant something.
Biomutant, yeah. Okay, that one's cool.
See, but yeah, none of these are going over 3 lines.
Yeah, they're very... I think probably the soundbite is a bit more detailed. Like with The Witcher.
I think The Witches is just subtitles as well.
Yeah, you're right. So
You
it's
can
subtitles
actually
and just
play-
choices.
Yeah, you can play the entire game without having the dialogue actually displayed. See, but like for visual novels and stuff, you've only got like, at max, I'd say probably not even a fifth of the page available for dialogue.
Yeah, and these are all just options. Well, there's one with more dialogue.
But yeah, it's only a couple of sentences.
Yeah, I think if you're really looking for like dialogue, you probably only be Pixel games.
Yeah, no, you're right.
See, but even like visual novels and stuff won't front load your dialogue with much.
No, 'cause who wants to read?
Exactly. And if you're clicking between each sentence or two, that's keeping the player engaged.
Mm.
It's something to do, then just, again, read.
Well, since these are pigeons, we could have them speak their dialogue in the form of a like a speech bubble, and then the options show up on the HUD.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, okay. That sounds cool. Let's do that. Okay, so this is going to be our speechable. And I'm just going to duplicate that, and then it's going to be dialog choices, and I'm just going to put that into an empty parent. Okay, so the speech bubble is going to then follow whichever character you click on in the scene, and then the dialog choices will be populated separately. So our speech bubble is going to be dynamic in size. So we're not going to use content. We're going to make this, oh wait, first of all, we need to add a layout element to that and ignore layout. And then the dialog itself, we need to add a content size fitter. And that's going to be preferred and preferred. I'm going to turn off the choices for now so we can see. So there you can see with the content size fitter, it's gone and actually sized that element to fit the text exclusively. And then we can go and add any sort of layout group to that. Do middle center, we're not going to expand anything, and then we're going to add a content size fitter to that as well. And go preferred, preferred. And now everything fits that exactly. And we can go and add some padding to all of that. Now if we go and change the dialog here, you can see how it expands the box as well. And we can just add maybe a little tail here. Do we have an arrow? We do not. Okay, that's fine. We'll change this one out for, let's do that one. Yeah, and then we'll just position it like sort of at the bottom right of each of these. Or maybe let's do top, bottom left. That's what we should do. That one. Yeah, that'll be cool. And even for timed ones, we can actually go and add in like a fill. This one needs a layout element so that it doesn't get affected by the content size filter there. Scale that. We're going to use that one. What did we put it to? 15. Yeah. It is sliced. Yeah. We actually need it to have a sharp bottom left corner. That one. Yeah. And then the actual fill goes inside there. And for that one, it's going to just be the full square blank, and that's going to change to filled. And set this to mask. Horizontal. So there, now we get a little bit of a timer effect as well, if we need it. And we can just turn off that element until it's actually necessary. Okay, so for the speech bubble, we want to match it to the position of the wherever the pigeon is. So we need to adjust our pivot here. So our pivot's currently in the middle bottom. We need to change that to the bottom left. Yeah, then we can work with that. Yeah, bottom left, and then the anchoring actually needs to be for the bottom left corner, because what happens is we're calculating the position, converting world space to screen space, and screen space pixels count from the bottom left hand corner, so it goes bottom left to the full width of the screen and bottom left to the full height of the screen. So we need to make sure that our pivot is also matching that, otherwise we're going to get some really strange offsets when we set it. Okay, so for that we need a UI script. Let's go and create a UI folder there. And it's going to be UI speed bubble. I suppose we could have, no, we should only ever have one speech bubble open at a time. So we're going to do set dialog, and we're going to give it the dialog option, dialog object. And we're just going to use a set function over here. So when we choose the dialog, we set it off Then we can set it accordingly with that. And we also need a reference to whatever we're currently following. So that's going to be a transform. And then once we do set that, we're going to do a start coroutine for Okay, so we have our coroutine then. So we're not doing it in updates because that's just unnecessary. Rather going to just fire off a coroutine when it's necessary. And it needs to follow the character around, so we should do that on the late update. So we're going to do a wait for end of frame. And then we're going to do while. Let's do while. Interacting, I guess. Never forget that yield return null. So that would suck. And actually, it's not going to be yield return null. It's going to be yield return late updates. So it's just going to wait till the end of the frame and then do something. So we wait till the end and then we're going to update the position of this UI. And we're going to do, we are going to need the camera, yeah. Okay. We just get the main camera and then transform dot position. We'll see if transform works for us. I think. No, it's not, because if we're using a canvas scaler, we're going to have to separate that into its own canvas. That's going to be easier. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll do that in a second. So the position is going to equal then the camera dot world to screen point. Or do world to viewport point. And it needs to be the interactor transform dot position. And then we can multiply it by the root canvas, or the canvas scalar perhaps. Times the scale factor. Let's just try that. That might work. Okay, then we just need to call the set dialog somehow. Let's think how we're going to do that. Probably use a Unity event for that. drop that on there, give it reference to the scalar. Maybe it should be a singleton. Or we can do it as a static from here. Okay, let's do it as a static event from here.
Jared?
Yeah.
How is the speech bubble going to work? Is it going to be attached to each character, or is it going to instantiate one at each character regardless of who's talking?
There's only going to ever be one available.
Okay.
Because you've only got one set of responses, of choices.
Okay.
So if you start a dialogue interaction with one of them, it'll just have to deny you from starting another conversation before finishing that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a way better way of doing it.
Yeah. So we do static unity event, and that's going to be on dialogue interact. And I suppose we should pass our information through with that. It's going to be the dialogue. Oh, why don't we just give ourselves actually dialogue interaction, and then our speech bubble. Instead of that, can be dialogue interaction. And our dialog object on dialog interaction. Oh, we don't have one here yet. Okay. So we can just copy the name for that one. And yeah, now that's fulfilled. And we can just do an on enable for that and go dialog interaction dot on add listener set dialog. Then that doesn't need to be public anymore. And then we can just do an on disable for that one. So there's multiple dialog interaction scripts, but it's a static event. So we only have to subscribe to that one singular event, and all the scripts are able to call this. We just need to know now if there is one already in play, and we can actually do that on speech bubble with interacting. So we can say if not interacting, then we're going to do all of that, and interacting equals true. While interacting is true, then it's going to keep following that position around. Okay, now we just need to call this and pass it itself. And just as a little cheat for testing purposes, I'm just going to set interacting equals false over here, which is then going to cancel the last one out and then just start a new one. So it's going to allow us to just test by clicking on all of them and watching it move around. Yeah, so that's fine, that one's fine, and these need some dialogue attached to them. I suppose just apply it to all of them for now. Hey, look at that. That's awesome. So we click on it, the dialog shows up, and it follows that little pigeon around.
Someone did the speech bubble emote in the chat, and I thought that was the game just freaking out. It's like, how did that happen? If we wanted to give that a little bit of offset, like to have the corner be by the pigeon's head, would we code in add offset here, or would we move the child elements to the offset?
So
I suppose,
yeah, there's two things to consider there. So one being that the position you're following is the root of that object, right? So that's at the base of the feet. So we probably want to move that up by a meter and then see how that looks. And if we still want some additional offset, then we want pixel offset instead of, world unit offset. So let's go and add over here the interactive position plus vector 3 up. So that's just going to add 1 meter up. And let's see what that looks like. We might, we'll probably want some offset to the right of the character a bit.
because it's also kind of tricky to gauge, because obviously depending on camera angle and stuff, it's difficult to gauge world space offset.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why we're just going to the top of the head now, and then from there we're going to do pixel offset instead. So we're going to add, we can just go and add a new vector 3, and we're going to do, let's do 10 and 10. Let's see what that looks like. 10's not a lot though. Can probably pump that up a bit. Oh, there we go.
It's
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks fine. Cool, now we can actually display some of that.
We'd want to do maybe like a little scale from 0 to max on the dialog box, so it kind of opens up.
Yes. We can just do that over here. So using DG tweening, and then we can go transform do scale, do scale, and we're going to the end value of vector 3, 1 for a duration of, let's do 0.2 seconds. And let's just make sure that our local scale is vector 3, 0 to begin with. And then we'll just do a simple scale out at the end of that. Can add easing to that as well to make it kind of bounce or whatever, but that should be fine. I wonder how the scaling is going to affect the positioning. Okay, no, that's pretty good.
That's such a, I suppose because the root origin is bottom left, so and then everything, so it'll scale from that location, right?
Yeah, that's it. like just that little bit of juice really makes it so much more satisfying to use.
Between is magic.
Absolutely. Okay, so now that we're setting the dialogue, let's just turn that off. We don't need that. And once we set the dialogue, we want to then change out the text. So let's do we need TMP. And that's going to be dialogue text.
Jonathan's suggesting an ease.outback. Does that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Dot set ease, and then we're gonna do ease dot out back, and then what? Do an in back. Yeah, over there. We'll test that out in a second, and then that's going to be. So we need an int for our current dialog index, which is going to then be reset every time we get a new dialog object, and then that's going to be dialog object dot dialog choices current index. Dot oh no, sorry, not dialog choices, dialogs. There we go. So if I had more time, I would actually probably write a function directly in the dialog object to just give me back the next bit of dialogue instead of trying to keep track of that in here. Actually, let's just do that.
Yeah, because we'd want the UI to just handle. Okay,
just
this is
UI,
the text.
yeah. And for this, we're going to actually make this system.non-serialized. So you might not have seen this before, but so in a scriptable object, obviously anything you put in here is serialized. It's stored inside of this asset. In this case, we've got like a local variable that we just want to use. We don't want to store whatever this is. So it's just going to be non-serialized. So it's only going to be useful in memory. So whilst it's being used in play mode, but outside of play mode, it's just going to reset to its default. So here we're going to do string, and it's going to be next dialog. Ugh, can't be a void string. I mean, really. And yeah, we need to return then whatever the next one is. So if the current index is less than the count minus 1, then we can return dialogs current index, or rather not return it directly, but let's go, oops. Then over here we can say if We're going to increase that, and then if it is at the end of its cycle, we're going to do something. Let's do this as a bool, and then we're going to rather out the dialog. Because that way we can say if current dialog is now bigger or equal to dialogs.count, we increase it, then it's equal, yeah. Okay, then that's good. Then we're going to return false, else return true. We get it, then we increase it, then we check it. Yeah, something like that. So basically if it returns false, then it's at the end of its line. And if it returns true, then there's still another piece of dialog to get. So that we know if we need to fetch the choices or not. So let's get rid of that line. And it's going to be, this is going to go into an if statement instead. So if we get the next one out string, then that's going to equal dialog. Whoops. So if it's true, another and I'm interested to see if this still comes through. I think it should. And let's just log that out. Yeah, I think it is last dialog next, yeah. I think it needs to be bigger than the count. No, if it's equal to the count on the next one, it's going to be null. Or it's going to be out of range. So then return false. So if it's false, it means that there isn't another one. Show the choices. Yeah, okay. I think that is correct. Let's try it out. Oh, the in happens at the start of the tween. Oh, like the bounce.
Well, there's out back and there's in back. So the in sort of prefix means that it will happen at the start, and the out means it'll happen at the end.
Yeah, okay. So more dialogue to come. Oh, we don't have any means to actually go to the next bit of dialogue. So if interacting, Let's extract that. And then else if dialog interaction equals, we don't have a reference yet. So if dialog interaction equals this dialog interaction, then we can just go next dialog. Then we just go to the next one, fast forward it like that. And if we are at the end of the road after showing choices, then it's going to be false. We can use is null or empty to check then if it is null or empty, that means we are at the end of the road, so interacting can become false. So basically we can now click on it repeatedly. And that should then fast forward the dialogue. So hello there. And then it went to no more. Where was the next one? So we've got current dialogue equals 0. Then we give it back 0. If it's less than the count is 2. We increase it to 1. It should return true. See what that does. Getting dialogue at index 1. That needs to be there. So it gets the first one, it's at 1, it gets it again, then it's at 2. Okay. More to come. Got dialogue at index 1, but it didn't get any dialogue, did it? No. Okay, so let's see why that is. So then dialogue must be null there. I wonder if we do this. Let's see. Nope, did not like that. So if it's less, of course, we're doing less, we're not doing less than or equal. Guess it's just got to be less than the count. Math. There we go. Click it again and it disappears. Okay. It immediately dies because the index isn't ever reset. So what we can do with that is on our next dialog here, we could say out string and then bool reset equals false. So when you do it inline here, you don't have to call, or you don't have to put in a parameter here. So when we call the next dialog, we can do it over here, bool reset dialog equals false, and then in here, when we start it for the first time, we're going to do true, and then we don't need to have it there. So that's just going to reset it when you interact for the first time, back to 0, and now in here, you can say if reset, then current equals 0.
Don't you want to reset it on the second dialog? Otherwise, it'll just go back to 0, 1, 0, 1, won't it? Or do I just misunderstand that?
No. It's when you interact for the first time that it resets. So once we click on, yeah, you see we have this not interacting, which then goes to true. So this is the first time, the first interaction.
Oh, never mind. I thought the interaction for a moment was the return to dialogue.
Yeah. Okay, so now we get that. I did notice something with the UI there. We do need to call the layout rebuilder as soon as we set the text. So actually, let me just show you what I mean there, because this is quite a common thing you guys are going to come across. So there we get it, that changes and updates, and then the next time you see it doesn't, the sizing doesn't fit the content anymore. So when we set the content on the next one, we need to then go layout rebuilder dot force rebuild, and then what we want to rebuild is the dialog text transform parent, and we need to just cast that to a rect transform. So basically the parent of that dialog is the vertical layout group that's managing and the content size fitter. So we're telling it to rebuild it according to this object over here. So it'll go and recalculate that content size fitter again once the content has been updated. So there, now we get the sizing actually working nicely there. And actually, let's see, it appears before the position is actually updated, so we should probably update this position before we make it visible. That should fix that. Yeah, that's nice and seamless now. Let's see. So we've got chains of dialogue, and we don't have a speaker name yet. Cool. We didn't do like any of this other stuff.
But it's okay. We have dialogue that scales up and the birds do a little hop. That's all
Yeah.
that really matters.
Yeah, I think the structure is in place though. It would be the same kind of process, or like the speech bubble, then opening up the choices over here, then picking a choice, and the choice basically just selects the next dialogue chain. Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's a simple dialogue system in a nutshell, with some nice juicy feedback and some UI stuff. So cool. Yeah, not gonna take this much further for tonight.